The biased press was not criticized for not reporting the true journalism fairly or showing both sides of the story when former President Trump was in office. The press very rarely criticizes itself. Here's what the former president says. Biden's ratings have killed the radical left fake news cable channels. MSNBC and CNN have plummeted in the ratings. That's true, actually. CNN doesn't even have a show in the top 100. They should have embraced and endorsed Trump. Then their ratings would have been at new highs. My next guest isn't interested in those ratings, folks, but he is fighting back against unfair outlets like CNN just the same. We're trying to work some technical glitches out right now. Joining me now is the author of Guilt by Accusation, Alan Dershowitz. Mr. Dershowitz is actually suing CNN. There's the name of the book right there, folks. And CNN, of course, has, well, defamed Mr. Dershowitz, and that's the claim. Mr. Dershowitz, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad to have you here. So you're suing CNN for defamation. You had a major victory this past week in your lawsuit against that liberal opinion network. What was the latest?
Well, that's the good news. The judge looked at what I said. I said that if a president does anything unlawful or illegal, if the quid pro quo is unlawful or illegal, a president can be impeached. But if a president does nothing unlawful, nothing illegal, just because he wants to get reelected in what he believes is the national interest, is not an impeachable offense. What CNN did is they simply doctored the tape. They took out the words unlawful and illegal, and then they had their commentators get on television and say, do you know what Dershowitz said? He said a president can do things that are illegal and unlawful and still not be impeached. This is like Stalin. This is like Hitler. This is like Mussolini. And that's what the commentators said, knowing full well that I had said if a president does anything unlawful or illegal, he can be impeached. And the CNN just simply eliminated those words. The judge saw through that and said that they do not get the advantage of the fair reporting privilege because their reporting on what I said was not fair.
Congratulations to you for actually standing up to these bullies. NBC has been caught doing this twice in very high-profile cases. Why do you think the left-wing press, which is basically they're not even press, it's an insult to call them journalists or press because all they do is liberal opinion. Why do you think now they have to lie about what other people say to advance their left-wing narrative?
Well, it was very obvious in my case. I had spoken for 70 minutes on the floor of the Senate defending the president against impeachment on constitutional grounds. Almost everybody thought my speech was excellent, and it got very good reviews. CNN, in fact, criticized it, saying that I demanded the president commit a crime. But then they wanted to trash me. They wanted to undercut me. And so they just took what I said and they turned it exactly around. They said that I thought a president could get away with committing crimes, serious crimes, murder, rape, robbery, you name it, serious crimes. They didn't use those terms, but they said crimes when I had said exactly the opposite. So the goal was clearly to destroy me. They clearly had malice. They clearly knew what they were doing, and they made a very calculated decision to try to destroy my reputation, and they did. People thought I was a fool for saying a president could commit crimes, but of course I didn't say that. And so that's where the defamation comes, and there will be a lot of happy charities if I win my case, because I will be contributing a lot of the money I win after I pay my lawyers' fees and others to lots and lots of good and excellent charities. So CNN is going to have to pay, and the beneficiaries will be charities.
Well, liberal opinion outlets like the Washington Post and CNN were quick to push unfounded liberal opinion and call it news in the era of Trump. They did so citing unnamed and anonymous sources, and they abandoned time-tested journalistic practices. Now, if these outlets had maintained journalistic integrity, which they have not, would they be getting sued by you and by others?
Well, no, I think that it's about time. Look, I was one of the law clerks on New York Times versus Sullivan, and I've defended the First Amendment throughout my career, and I continue to defend it. But the First Amendment doesn't permit malicious, deliberate, lies about individuals. And sometimes they're not lies about individuals. Look at the New York Times. They had a picture on the front page of the New York Times, not in the editorial page, a picture of Palestinian children who were killed during the recent rocket attacks by Hamas on Israel. It turns out at least one of the children had already been killed once before during an earlier war. They just used her picture. Others of the children were killed by Hamas rockets, not by Israeli rockets. And of course, there were no pictures of the Israeli children. My cousin, who's a rabbi in Sderot, had just a few days earlier presided over the funeral of a 6-year-old Israeli boy who was in his bunker, in his safety place, and the rocket broke through and killed him and injured his mother. But none of that in the New York Times. The New York Times only focuses on its distorted approach to the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Well, I pray your lawsuit charts the way, as did Nicholas Sandmann, that your lawsuits chart the way for some accountability to these left-wingers who are doing great harm, whether it be the anti-Jewish antics of the New York Times or the anti-truth antics of CNN and the Washington Post. Mr. Dershowitz, we always appreciate your time here on the Chris Salcedo Show. We'll talk again.